Hello, welcome to the Eclectic Reader. Listen to great books and stories while you use your eyes and hands for other things. Now here's your host, Madison Mason.
Hi, it's Madison Mason. Thanks for listening. This is Chapter 55 of The Grey Quarry Boys. The Grey Quarry Boys, Chapter 55, The Deer Hunt. Hank Bumgardner loved his hunting, ever since he was a kid up in the Smoky Mountains, talking to pine forests for deer and bear, coon, possum, and squirrels. It hadn't been a sport in those deprived days. It was meat, and the only means of keeping body and soul together. So he'd developed ways of bagging his prey that were anything but sporting and were very illegal. But the big silo did it anyway. One method was baiting deer with a salt lick that he stole from a dairy farm outside Sanford. He'd learned his lesson about hunting deer out of season, the way he learned all his lessons, the hard way. He got caught by Fish and Game and had to pay a fine. If he got caught with a salt lick, it would mean jail. But Silo loved killing deer and loved the taste of venison, so he was willing to take his chances. He got the urge to disappear deer hunting on a Friday in November. He had his license in his pocket, the weekend off, and a gallon of moonshine whiskey. He'd taken the block of salt out into the woods way north of Sanford 3 weeks earlier and hidden it near a stream where only he would know. He figured the deer must have found it by now. All he would have to do is pitch camp and get up early to wait for them. He took his old army backpack full of sandwiches Bonnie had made, his shotgun, and took off for the woods. He was disappointed that Craven had no yen to go with him to murder deer, but every damn thing Craven did disappointed him, so he headed off alone. His plan was to park his truck at the rail yard and steal a shuttle cart and run it up the line to a siding 20 miles north. It was a small 4-man cart pushed by a 6-cylinder diesel engine, which Hank was not authorized to use, but it was the weekend and no one else would be using it. If he got it back to the yard by Sunday night, he would be fine. What the hell? So off he went, sipping corn whiskey on the way. Silo arrived at the site and switched the cart onto the siding. He parked, turned off the motor, threw the switch back onto the main line in case a train came through, which wouldn't happen because that line wouldn't be used until Monday morning. But he switched it back anyway and lugged his stuff off into the woods. It took him most of an hour to set up his camp, 3 times as long as it should have. Why the hell wasn't Craven here to do it? But he finally got it up, threw some rocks in a circle for a fire pit, and gathered up a pile of dead wood for the night ahead. Then he took a swig of whiskey, growled as it burned down his throat, and set off through the woods to check out his salt lick. He stumbled down a few different trails until he found the one he'd marked. Finally, he located the salt lick down by a stream, and sure enough, there in the soft red mud of the creek bank were deer tracks galore. He smiled to himself, proud at how canny he had been. What the hell if it was illegal? Hank Bumgardner was coming home with a deer. He stomped back up the trail to his camp to start a fire, eat a couple jelly sandwiches, and drink himself into a stupor. Next morning, Hank crawled out of his tent with his head split in two. He couldn't feel his feet, and all he wanted to do was puke. The moonshine had burnt the front lobe of his brain down to the size of a barbecued chicken gizzard. He heaved himself up, shoved a sandwich into his pocket, and took a slug of the poison that provided the agony. Then he stumbled to the edge of his campsite and threw up so violently and so long that he thought his boots would come up next. When his stomach settled, he took 2 pulls at the napalm water. This time it stayed down and he started feeling better. He grabbed his shotgun and clumped off to hide in the woods, positioned himself in the brush some 30 yards from the salt lick, so well hidden that no one walking past would ever know he was there. And he waited. Hank sat all day waiting to blow a hole in a deer, come to lick his salt. He fell asleep with boredom and snapped awake a number of times ready to kill, but no deer. He only stirred from his post once to wander off toward the tracks and squat to the inexorable call of nature. Something about the woods always hit him down in his lower regions, an ancient urge to mark his territory. Then he went back to sit and wait for the deer that never came. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon he gave it up, the lure of the whiskey jug too strong to resist. Although Hank could still drink at home if he wanted, it seemed to cause problems and lead to fights. He found his family so damn pig-headed and stupid, he thought it best to drink away from home. Even then, for some reason, every time he came home drunk, it turned into a big-ass fight. Stupid people. He spent that night sitting in the dirt around his fire and drinking his corn whiskey. A chunk of some old song stuck in his spinning brain, like a needle hopping over the same crack on a broken record. All night long he sang, Bill Jones had a daughter, Bill Jones had a son. One went to Denver, the other went wrong. His wife, she got killed in a poolroom fight, and still he keeps singing, morning till night. But he couldn't for the life of him remember the part that old Bill Jones kept singing. So he mumbled that snatch of a tune 1,000 times like a chant, over and over and over in the firelight, as the smoke rose up through the pine boughs to the starry dark above. Finally he passed out and slept all night in the dirt by the fire. He awoke early to the chill of dawn, shivering and covered in dew. Bird calls and sounds of the forest coming to life irritated. His stomach was sour as a moldy wash rag, and his head throbbed with misery, but he would kill him a deer today if it was the last thing he ever did. So off he stumbled to his post, shotgun in hand. Again he sat all day, dozing, eaten alive by ticks and mosquitoes, but no deer came for his bait. Late in the afternoon a breeze kicked up. Silo was just about to give up and pack it in when something told him to wait, an instinct, and for some reason this time he chose to listen. He hadn't eaten all day, and he was in a bad mood. His haunches ached, and he was bored. But finally he dozed off again to the droning of flies and a lazy dream of Joan Crawford, the movie star. She was on a raft, floating down a moonlit river. She wore a silver evening gown and red combat boots, and talked French to him. He didn't understand a word, but thought it was French anyway. Just as she started to loosen the straps on her sequin dress, Hank snapped awake. He thought he saw movement through the haze of sleep, an imperceptible movement, a delicate stirring 7 yards away in the brush. Yeah, something was coming. His senses jumped. That old adrenaline made his heart pump and his hands tremble. He also felt a sudden need to defecate again, squat in the forest like another animal, and add his lot to the ever-composting world around him. The pressure suddenly became awful, and he fought against the cramps in his gut to focus on the gently shifting leaves ahead, which slowly edged into view. It took tremendous strength of will not to drop his coveralls right there, but something stopped him, told him to stay still. He came to kill deer, and damn it, if it was a deer coming, then... Yes, it was. Slowly, a long, delicate face began to emerge from the brush. Wet black eyes searched for signs of danger, but Hank didn't so much as breathe. It was a doe, but he wanted a buck. It had to be a buck. He waited for the buck. She approached the salt lick and sniffed, her long pink tongue reaching gently, ran across the green block of compressed salt. Something shifted behind her. The buck! Hank readied himself. No, God damn it, it was just her fawn. 3 or 4 months by the look, its spots just fading. No buck, where's the buck? He waited, shaking. The grace and delicacy of the animals was unappreciated by the hunter. In fact, annoying. He wanted a buck, and that was all. A buck. The fawn slipped silently to its mother's side and stretched its nose to sniff the salt. Damn it, if there wasn't no buck with him, he'd kill the damn doe and hope he didn't get caught. His heart beat faster. His fat fingers twitched. The breeze began to shift. Suddenly the doe sensed something wrong, and her head jerked up in alarm. At that very moment, Hank stumbled up, leveled the shotgun at the frightened animal. Instinct forced her to bolt in the opposite direction as if yanked by ropes. Just then, Hank let go with both barrels, and the woods echoed in violent thunder. Smoke filled the air with the smell of gunpowder. Birds spewed into the sky, leaving only silence in their wake. Hank crashed through the brush to see his kill and finish the job if necessary. The first thing he saw was his illegal salt lick torn into chunks and splattered with blood. To one side lay the fawn, panting. A gaping hole in its neck pumped dark blood onto the fallen leaves. It stared at the huge man in innocent shock, the pink-gray tongue lolling from its mouth as if reaching for salt. One wet brown eye stared at the hunter, gently questioning why. Its head had been torn nearly from its neck by the blast of the double-aught shot. Hank saw the soft light in the fawn's eye fade and dim until the eye, open in accusation, ceased to see. "Shit," he blurted. "I killed a goddamn baby." "Oh, well, what the hell? Better than nothing."
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of The Eclectic Reader. Please go on to the next numbered episode to continue. Also, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you'd like to help support the project, you can donate under Madison Mason at Patreon. And please, check out our website, kltkrdr.com, for more information.
Hi, this is Madison Mason. I want to personally thank you for listening to The Eclectic Reader and invite you to share your experience, your thoughts, and your suggestions. We have many great books lined up for the future, but if you have requests for anything that is in the public domain, please email us at kltkrdr@gmail.com.
kltkrdr@gmail.com